Chapter 1008. However, as soon as this thought came to mind, he immediately shook his head in denial. What kind of status did the Hua family have? Who was this girl? Miss Hua, as an elder, of course I wouldn't casually insult someone, but I'm doing this for your own good. If you don't believe me, you can ask her if she knows someone called Pak Yuan. Fan Lechin was determined to expose this little girl's fake face and did his best to prove her vulgarity to Hua Tianxian. Yes, she does. So what? Jing Yunjiao smiled as if she was looking at a clown. She had invited Fan Lechin over to humiliate and attack her, but she didn't expect him to take the initiative to come looking for trouble. This saved her the trouble of thinking of a way to start a conflict. You admitted it yourself. Fan Lechin sneered. That Pak Yuan is a man in his 30s. His ex-wife was a loose woman, and he himself isn't a good person either. I even heard that he had another girlfriend, and you appeared with him at Hua's jewelry to buy some luxury goods. Isn't that right? Miss Hua, she hid a violet bracelet from Hua's jewelry. If you don't believe me, you can check it out and see if it was bought by someone called Pak Yuan. How could Pak Yuan buy an item worth 10 to 20 million and give it to someone who has no relationship with him? Even if it was given to his sister, it wouldn't be appropriate. Therefore, she is Pak Yuan's little lover outside. Halfway through her words, Fan Lechin's lecherous eyes suddenly became filled with disgust. She fiercely said to Jing Yunjiao, calling you a little lover is already praising you. I think you can't even be compared to a prostitute. At least those women aren't as greedy and insatiable as you. Look at the way you're dressed. Once you open your mouth, you're clearly someone who doesn't know what's important. Other than Bai Yuan, do you have other financial backers outside? You're so young yet so casual. What did your parents teach you? Fan Lechin's continuous words were enough to make a little girl feel ashamed. However, Jing Yunjiao's actions were upright, so naturally, he wasn't included. Hua Tianxian finally remembered that Jing Yunjiao had suddenly called her a few days ago to ask her to help deal with a bidding incident at Hua's jewelry. At the time, she had agreed without hesitation and reported it to her parents. She heard that the bidder had backed out of the deal, but because of Jing Yunjiao's advance warning, the bidder hadn't returned the money. From the looks of it, that person was none other than President Fan. However, at the mention of the violet bracelet, Celestial Immortal Hua recalled it and had a deep impression of it. Hua's jewelry did indeed have a set of royal purple treasures at the main shopping center in the capital city. The price was exorbitant. Some time ago, Mayor Shu had called her father and personally ordered the bracelet. He didn't even ask her father to send someone to deliver it. Instead, he took it very seriously and personally went to pick it up. In recent months, the Hua Corporation had only had one set of royal purple treasures. Hua Tianxian couldn't help but look at Jing Yunjiao a few more times. Her eyes were filled with emotion. She hadn't expected that Mayor Shu would dote on her so much. It seemed like her life as the daughter of the Shu family was pretty good. However, when Fan Lechin looked at Hua Tianxian, he misunderstood again. He thought that Hua Tianxian already had suspicions about Jing Yunjiao. Miss Hua, with your status, it's better if you don't interact with her too much. Otherwise, she'll ruin your reputation. Am I right? After Fan Lechin said this, he pushed his daughter forward. This is my daughter, Wei Wei. You two should get along well. Why don't Miss Hua and my daughter go shopping somewhere else first? Chapter 1009. Fan Weiwei's expression was one of embarrassment. Her father seemed to have once again treated her as a commodity that could be used, casually arranging her life. However, she didn't dare to refuse. Privately, she gave Jing Yunjiao and Hua Tianxian an apologetic look. She was completely at a loss for what to do. She was a 20-year-old girl, yet she looked as confused and flustered as a child. She looked rather pitiful. Jing Yunjiao knew that this Fan Lechin was a great son. Originally, he thought that Fan Lechin's wife and daughter would have some tricks up their sleeves. Otherwise, they wouldn't have chosen to bring the twins back to the Fan Lechin family to attack Tan Shi. However, now that he saw Fan Weiwei's appearance, he immediately understood that Fan Lechin's wife might not have any tricks up her sleeves, but she was completely powerless. This Fan Lichin in front of him could be said to be the epitome of a scumbag. He occupied his wife at home and raised his illegitimate children outside. He even took pride in it and never got tired of it. Have you said enough? Jing Yunjiao finally spoke. Hu Tianxian stood to the side. He couldn't tell what her attitude was, which made Fan Lichin a little confused. Flying into a rage out of humiliation? Temph, there's no Pak Yuan here. No one can help you. Moreover, do you think that the cousin of the Shu family will care about you? I invited you here only for the sake of face. You, a wild girl, dare to be impudent here? What a joke. Fan Lichin didn't back down in the slightest. In fact, she was full of confidence. Jing Yunjiao didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed and glanced behind Fan Lichin. What a coincidence. Fan Lichin thought that Pak Yuan wouldn't appear at all. At this moment, their eyes met and he walked in her direction. Because the banquet had already begun, most of the people had already arrived, including Yunling Medical's Qin Shui. He was also nearby, looking around without a trace. What are you looking at? Seeing Jing Yunjiao remain silent, Fan Lichin said in disgust. Then, he subconsciously turned his head in the direction of Jing Yunjiao's gaze, and his expression immediately changed. Why is Pak Yuan here? There was also a woman beside him. Although the woman looked to be in her 30s, she had a mature and steady charm. Pak Yuan was even calmer when he saw Fan Lichin. After approaching him, he directly asked, "What nonsense is Boss Fan spouting now?" "So it's Xiao Bai. You're really like a lingering spirit. To be able to come to a place like this, it seems like you're quite capable," Fan Lichin said sarcastically. "Thank you for your praise, Boss Fan. However, I'm still no match for Boss Fan. You're so resourceful. Not only did you come to the Shu family, you even dared to bully a guest of the Shu family in front of so many people. It seems like you don't care about Mayor Shu. Could it be that you've found a big backer?" Pak Yuan sneered. Fan Lichin's expression turned ugly. "Xiao Bai, 2 days ago, your wife, Tan Shi, caused a huge commotion. Don't tell me you didn't see it. I don't know what you think of such a wonderful scene." Fan Lichin deliberately dragged Tan Shi into the conversation. That Tan Shi had been silent ever since she was raped. She hid at home all day, not daring to go out. After all, the photo was too clear. Although the key parts were censored, everyone could see her face clearly. Therefore, the moment she went out, others could recognize her. Although Pak Yuan had already come forward to explain that he and Tan Shi were no longer a couple tomorrow morning, Tan Shi had messed around with several men. Her relatives and friends all felt ashamed. The current Pak Yuan had not seen Tan Shi. If he saw her, he would probably be even more shocked. In just a few short days, she had already lost her previous glory. She stayed at her parents' house all day long. She was as dumb as a wooden chicken. She even needed her parents to serve her food and drink. Chapter 10:10. Tan Shi's entire life had been ruined by Fan Lichin. If that man had not appeared, she would have obediently followed Pak Yuan for the rest of her life. She would have given birth to 2 children for him, and from then on, she would have taken care of her husband and children. Perhaps her life would have become unreasonable and she would nag non-stop every day, but Pak Yuan would never abandon her no matter what. Even if she did not have a rich life, it would definitely be a stable and ordinary life. But now, everything was ruined. Her reputation was gone, her son was gone, and her husband was gone. Although her parents loved her, they sometimes despised her for causing such an embarrassing situation and embarrassing them. She even wanted to die, but she did not have the courage to do so. Therefore, she could only drag it out and go crazy in despair every day. She did not know if she was torturing herself or the people around her. However, even if Pak Yuan saw Tan Shi's current miserable state, he probably would not have any pity for her. That woman had already squandered all of his feelings, leaving nothing behind. She was no different from a stranger. Moreover, she had chosen the path herself. Even if she fell to her death or became disabled, she had to continue walking it. She could not let him, who had already set foot on another bright path, go back on his words and help her fall to her death in a deep ditch. Therefore, even if Fan Lichin mentioned her now, Pak Yuan still did not even frown. Boss Fan, you're only a few years older than me, and you've already lost your mind. Tan, she is not my wife. She's your woman. You sent your woman to another man's bed. It seems like you have a soft spot for cuckoldry. Also, speaking of the recent news. Boss Fan, it seems that other than the small media company you invested in, no one else dares to say a word, right? Pak Yuan mocked. That's because others were frightened by the fake goods you found. I don't know how you got in, but that's good. In a while, I'll personally ask Mayor Shu if he gave that order. Fan Liqin became angrier the more he thought about it. At this time, he even had another guess. Maybe this Pak Yuan had bribed Mayor Shu's people and used Mayor Shu's name to give orders. Let's take a look then. Pak Yuan looked straight ahead. Fan Liqin felt stifled in his heart. Miss Hua, you've seen it for yourself. This little girl is a slut that anyone can fuck. Pak Yuan is one of her lovers. You have to stay away from her. Hua Tianxian could not help but be speechless. Boss Fan's real intention was not to make her stay away from Jing Yunjiao, but to humiliate her. The place where they were standing was very lively. Now that he was pointing at Jing Yunjiao's nose and scolding him, how could they ignore it? Suddenly, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Jing Yunjiao's face was very beautiful, but she was a stranger. Although only a few ladies remembered that she was the little girl who had donated money to charity, they did not think too much of it. How could they remember the events of that day so clearly? Moreover, Jing Yunjiao had put on makeup today and specially dressed up, so there were some differences between her and the Xu Xianlan of 20 years ago. Xu Xianlan rarely appeared in public other than when she was treating illnesses and administering medicine. Moreover, her appearance was more gentle. At that time, there was no modern makeup technology. Therefore, after all this fuss, Jing Yunjiao and Xu Xianlan's resemblance was reduced by 30 to 40%. The remaining resemblance could not be linked at all because of the long time that had passed. Fan Liqin, say that again if you have the guts. Jing Yunjiao stared at him as if she was throwing cold knives at him. Say it again. So what if I say it 10 times? What kind of storm can a few little girls from the countryside stir up? I'm going to talk to Mayor Shu later to prevent an indecent person like you from leading the Shu family's daughter astray. Chapter 10-11. Fan Liqin wasn't afraid of a little girl, and curses came out of her mouth. That person's triangular eyes sparkled. While he spoke, he sized up Jing Yunjiao from head to toe. He casually dusted off his clothes, causing his body to sway a few times. His eyes were filled with disdain as he continued, "You can even afford to wear a bracelet that's worth tens of millions. Who knows how many times you'll have to be slept with before you can get it back? I've seen many women like you who can only show off on men. You want to be in the limelight in this kind of place. Anyone can tell that you're not serious with your coquettish attitude. You're the only one who's stupid." He spat out a mouthful of turbid air and felt a wave of comfort in his heart. The past few days had really angered him quite a bit. There were many times when he wanted to curse, but he didn't have the chance. Now that this little girl had delivered herself to him, she couldn't blame him for being impolite. Fan Liqin's words were extremely unpleasant to hear. Many people present frowned as they felt that it was unbearable to hear. They were all honored guests invited by Mayor Shu. When had they ever heard such words? They looked at the little girl who was being scolded and pitiful, but they didn't know the situation and couldn't help her. Otherwise, if they really helped a woman who wasn't serious, it wouldn't sound good if word got out. Su Chu and Xiao Haiqing, who were beside Jing Yunjiao, were so angry that their faces turned red. They couldn't believe that someone dared to scold Jing Yunjiao in front of them. Thinking back to when Jing Yunjiao was besieged by a group of reporters, the unpleasant words were just SOSO. This Fan Liqin was even more powerful than those shrews in the marketplace. Of course, his guts were even more arrogant. On the other side, Hua Tianxian and Ren Xingyue were also angry. "Boss Fan, please conduct yourself with dignity," Hua Tianxian said angrily with a cold expression. "Yunjiao." Xiao Haiqing wasn't in a hurry. She tilted her head and called out, as if she was ready to teach him a lesson for her at any time. Jing Yunjiao's face turned green and red, But he wasn't angry. He had heard a lot of unpleasant words in his previous life. What was this? In fact, the more this Fan Lechine spoke, the more miserable his death would be. With so many people watching, he dared to scold her. Ha! Jing Yunjiao suddenly smiled coldly. Fan Lechine thought that the little girl in front of her had gone mad from anger. Before she could say anything, she saw Hu Yarrow reach out and place her handbag in Miss Hua's hand. Her eyes were cold and filled with a murderous intent. Fan Lechine could not help but feel her heart clench when she raised the corners of her eyes. Xiao Haiqing took a look and licked her lips. She also handed over the things in her hand. Please take them. It was the same for Suchu. In the next moment, Jing Yunjiao took 2 steps closer to Fan Lechine. Xiao Haiqing gave Suchu a look, and the two of them moved a few steps to the side and surrounded Fan Lechine. Their expressions were a little dangerous, but it was hard to tell what was going on. If it were any other occasion, they would think that these 3 little girls were trying to get physical. But here, and they were wearing such beautiful and elegant clothes, just as everyone was thinking, Jing Yunjiao suddenly picked up the tray next to her and viciously slapped the person. Fan Lechine was a little stunned. He immediately turned a few times to face Xiao Haiqing. Xiao Haiqing didn't care about her image. She lifted her skirt slightly and in the next moment, raised her leg and kicked the person towards Suchu. Fan Lechine didn't expect that the 3 of them would dare to make a move. After spinning a few times dizzily, he came to his senses. He quickly steadied himself and reached out to strangle Suchu. His ferocious look was especially frightening. Suchu closed her eyes and raised her hand to slash fiercely, dodging the attack. Jing Yunjiao snorted coldly. From behind, she grabbed Fan Lechine's collar, lifted him up, and threw him fiercely to the side. Chapter 10-12. Jing Yunjiao wouldn't ruin her birthday party, so she aimed at the fountain. Fan Lechine's entire body fell in, creating a splash of water. In an instant, his body was soaked clean. You shrews. You little slut, how dare you hit me? Where's the security? Where's Mayor Shu? I want to see Mayor Shu. In just a short while, Fan Lechine's face had turned green and red. Because he had hit the fountain's pillar when he fell, his nose was bleeding. It looked a little scary. Jing Yunjiao smiled coldly. See Mayor Shu? Okay, I'll get Mayor Shu to come out and see you. Get someone to invite him, Jing Yunjiao said simply as she turned her head and stared at the employee beside her. Originally, she only wanted Fan Lechine to do something to anger the public. Now was the perfect time. Although she had hit him, it was only a few hits. He could only blame himself for being stupid. Besides, she had recorded everything he had said with her phone. Otherwise, how could he have let her nag for so long without saying anything? Fan Lechine crawled out of the pool like a water ghost. His body was in pain. Xiao Haiqing snorted coldly when she saw this. She kicked him back into the pool. Fan Lechine was so angry that his legs turned to jelly. He was very angry inside. He didn't know what was going on at Mayor Shu's house. It had been so long, but no one came forward to help him. With a belly full of anger, he stood in the pool and didn't come out. He was just waiting for Mayor Shu's people to come and take a good look. When the time came, for the sake of Mayor Shu and for the sake of his niece's upbringing, he would absolutely not allow such a woman to stay by his niece's side. Pak Yuan was the same. If he stood on the side of this wild girl, then he was doomed to lose Mayor Shu's favor. Also, he had to get to the bottom of those calls to the media. Fan Lechine cut a sorry figure, while Jing Yunjiao stood to the side with a calm expression, not saying a word. Instead, he gave off the impression that he was lonely yet strong. He always felt that this girl had a strong temper and was unyielding. She didn't seem like the kind of woman who would do what Fan Lechine said. Not long after, Shu Yuanturek and Shu Wancheng arrived. Originally, Shu Yuanturek was going to send someone to look for Jing Yunjiao. After all, it was almost time to introduce her. However, when the 2 brothers arrived and saw this scene, they were somewhat astonished. First uncle, second uncle. Jing Yunjiao walked over and greeted them. Her crisp voice immediately reached everyone's ears. In an instant, countless people's faces lit up. Their pupils dilated as they were shocked beyond words. The Shu family only had one junior, Shu Yuantarek. The only person who could call Shu Yuantarek and Shu Wancheng uncle was the young lady who had just been found outside. That was the young lady with the surname Jing. Fan Lechin's ears were filled with the sound of the gushing water from the fountain. In addition, he was dizzy from the fall. His mind was filled with ringing sounds, so he didn't notice the way she addressed him. Therefore, he ignored everyone's complicated gazes and treated Shu Yuantarek as a life-saving straw. He complained, "Mayor Shu, you have to stand up for me. These 3 wild girls actually dared to be rough with me. Look at my clothes." The corners of everyone's mouths twitched. They didn't want to see Fan Lechin's stupid look anymore. The girl had already called him uncle, but he actually didn't hear it. If he had said that it was a misunderstanding before Shu Yuantarek spoke and took the initiative to apologize, perhaps the matter would have been lighter. Now, the moment he opened his mouth, he said that Mayor Shu's niece was a wild girl. He was really courting death. Chapter 10:13. Fan Lechin's face was filled with anticipation and resentment. He was waiting for Shu Yuantarek to issue an angry command to chase the 3 wild girls out. "Say that again," Shu Yuantarek asked with a cold face. "Mayor Shu, I'm also a guest you invited. Even if you don't give the monk face, you have to give the Buddha face. This girl doesn't give me any face at all. I only said a few words to her and she actually hit me," Fan Lechin said again. "What did you say to her?" Shu Wancheng's gaze was faint and filled with a sense of judgment. Fan Lechin felt that the reaction of the Mayor Shu brothers was a little strange. Shouldn't they have asked someone to pull him up first? Why did they ask him what he said without knowing the gravity of the situation? However, even though he was very suspicious, since he had asked, he still had to find an excuse to gloss over it. However, just as he was about to speak, Jing Yunjiao took out his phone from the small bag in Hu Tianxian's hands. After pressing a button, a very clear voice suddenly sounded in the air. "Fan Lechin, if you have the guts, say that again. Say it again. Even if I say it 10 times, so what? What kind of storm can a few little girls from the countryside stir up? I'm going to talk to Mayor Shu later to prevent an indecent person like you from leading the Shu family's daughter astray. You can even afford a bracelet worth over 10 million. Who knows how many times you have to be slept with before you can get it back? I've seen a lot of women like you who can only show off on men. You want to be in the limelight in this kind of place. With your coquettish attitude, anyone can tell that you're not serious. It's just that you're stupid." Even though Fan Lechin's voice didn't have any special characteristics, it could still be distinguished and there was no need to refute it. When Shu Yuantarek heard this, he was so angry that his face turned green. "I just found out that my, Shu Yuantarek's, niece is actually indecent in your eyes? Boss Fan, you sure talk big," Shu Yuantarek said sarcastically. Shu Wancheng's face was so cold that it could even form ice. His eyes were bursting with anger, and he was already planning in his heart. He had never seen this boss Fan before, but if he wanted to, he could kill him at any time. "Niece? Who? Her?" Fan Lechin was stunned and pointed at Jing Yunjiao. "That's right, it's her. The wild girl that you scolded to be worthless." Shu Yuantarek's tone made one's hair stand on end. He suddenly said, "I don't remember inviting Boss Fan over. How did you get in?" Fan Lechin's mouth twitched. "How could that be? This wild girl is Mayor Shu's niece. That's why she's here, and that's why she's so arrogant." Fan Lechin was completely dumbfounded. His mind was in a mess. The people around him all had complicated expressions. He didn't know if they were gloating or mourning for him. "No. Mayor Shu, let me explain. I really didn't know she was I saw her once at the jewelry store. She was wearing a bracelet that someone else bought, so I misunderstood. Mayor Shu." After a while, Fan Lechin said in a panic. Everyone present was a famous and promising person. Shu Yuantarek may only be a mayor now, but in reality, if he wanted to, he could be an even higher official. His power was deeply intertwined, not to mention the business world. There were even people who said that they had received favors from him. Although he didn't know why, he heard that there were people who respected the Shu family very much decades ago. It seemed to be because of old Master Shu. In short, there were 3 words: don't mess with them. Chapter 10:14. He had offended Mayor Shu's niece in front of so many people. Bracelet? Are you talking about the violet jade bracelet? I personally went to President Hua to buy that item. Do you need me to bring the receipt for you to verify it? Shu Yuantarek snorted coldly in a low voice. Inside the warm glass building, he suddenly felt an icy chill. What? Then the violet jade bracelet was also... Fan Liqin suddenly felt that his brain wasn't enough to process this. After thinking about it carefully, it did seem to be the case. Jing Yunjiao and Pak Yuan hadn't bought anything in front of him at all. It was completely his subconscious. I'll ask again. How did you get in? Shu Yuantarek asked again faintly. Fan Liqin shivered. Mayor Shu, I received an invitation. Where's the invitation? Bring it out for me to see, Shu Yuantarek said coldly. Fan Liqin's body stiffened. When his daughter heard this, she hurriedly took out the golden invitation from her bag. Shu Yuantarek took it and looked at it. He immediately said, Boss Fan, you really have the nerve to say that. You can even fake an invitation. You really surprised me. What kind of place do you think the Shu family is? You think you can come as you please? What do you think the precious niece of Shu Yuantarek is? You think you can scold her as you please? Fake. That's impossible. Fan Liqin immediately retorted. Whether it's real or fake, you can compare it with someone else's and you'll know. I, Shu Yuantarek, won't bother to wrongly accuse you, Shu Yuantarek said coldly. This was the first time in 20 years that the Shu family had invited so many guests. Naturally, they had to be attentive. Every invitation was personally signed by him. There was absolutely no possibility of fraud. However, although Fan Liqin's name on the invitation was very similar to his handwriting, the minute differences were still very big. This kind of thing could be easily distinguished by comparing or finding someone to do a comparison. Boss Fan, your invitation is indeed different from ours, Hu Tianxian's father added fuel to the fire and said with a smile while shaking his head. When Fan Liqin heard this, he felt as though someone had viciously smacked him with a hammer. His entire being was so depressed that he was about to explode. His hands trembled as he felt the naked, disdainful gazes around him. Anger, resentment. You did this, right? Fan Liqin stared at Jing Yunjiao and said, Mayor Shu, as long as you go and investigate, you'll know that I didn't fake this. Absolutely not. Impersonating Mayor Shu's signature. Just this point alone was enough for Mayor Shu to keep an eye on him. I did this. Boss Fan, did I specially invite you over to scold me? You were the one who took the initiative to appear in front of me to cause trouble. Don't throw dirty water at me like this. Jing Yunjiao said directly. That one sentence made Fan Liqin's heart feel stifled. He only felt that after the external injury, his heart was starting to ache faintly. Yes, from the very beginning, he was the one who took the initiative to look for this girl. Many people had seen it. Today, he was completely screwed. Just based on Shu Yuantarek's connections, there would be people who would take the initiative to toy with him until he died. More importantly, there was also Shu Wancheng. This was a complete loss of reputation. It was guaranteed that after today, there would be countless people who would take the initiative to grab hold of his weakness and trample him into the dust. His cold lips trembled. At this moment, the phone on his body rang. His phone was wet, but because it was separated by his clothes, it was only a little wet and didn't break. Looking at the caller ID, he gritted his teeth and picked it up. After all, he had already offended Mayor Shu, Boss Fan. Something happened. Just now, someone exposed the matter of the female student from half a year ago. A panicked voice suddenly sounded from the other end of the phone. Naturally, it was released very quickly on the internet, not to mention the speed of dissemination. What? What female student? Boss Fan didn't understand. Chapter 10:15. Fan Liqin wasn't pretending to be dumb. He really didn't remember who that female student was. After all, half a year ago, he had given an order to scheme against an extremely ordinary family. To him, it was simply a small matter. After the limelight had passed, it was naturally cast to the back of his mind. It's the one who you asked me to publish the news about a female student who angered her mother to death because she wanted to buy expensive electronic products. Boss Fan, what should we do now? The news is inaccurate and 2 people have died. If we allow other media outlets to continue spreading it, a small media company like ours won't be able to handle it. You're also a shareholder. Quickly help us think of a way to deal with it, the other party hurriedly said. Jing Yunjiao, who was standing at the side, heard everything clearly. She didn't expect the matter to be settled so quickly. She immediately gave Pak Yuan a look of approval. After being reminded by the person on the other end of the phone, Fan Liqin remembered. There was indeed such an incident, however, it was handled very well at the time. The female student had died, and the father had taken the money. Even if there was a reason, it was unreasonable. Why would there suddenly be media outlets? Her eyes suddenly widened and she looked at Pak Yuan. She stared fixedly at him. Was it him or that girl? Boss Fan, you don't look too good. Did you do something immoral? Let me give you a piece of advice. Karma doesn't go well. Even if a person is dead, they might suddenly come back to life and talk to you about the past. Jing Yunjiao said eerily. Fan Liqin shivered. When she said that, he suddenly remembered the face of the female student that he had completely forgotten. There was grievance, hatred, and anger. It's you. The 2 words seemed to be squeezed out from between his teeth. This little girl who looked so young actually came up with such a plan. Thinking about it carefully, she probably had it all planned out long ago, right? To be able to find someone to investigate his background in such detail, it must have started from the moment Tan Shi's post was released. She did it so quietly, as if she had forgotten about him. She didn't give him a single threat. She was obviously Mayor Shu's niece, but she didn't show it in front of him at all. She even had someone send him an invitation. She knew that he would definitely choose to come when he saw the invitation letter. As long as she arranged for the staff to inform them in advance, no one would carefully check whether the signature on the letter was real or fake. It would make him think that he was holding a real one, and then attract his attention so that he would take the initiative to cause trouble. In such an occasion, with such a big lineup, not to mention scolding this little girl, even if he only caused a little trouble for her, Shu Yuantarek would severely reprimand him or even drive him out for the sake of his niece's face, right? And he even chose today to expose this matter. At this time, Fan Liqin only felt a chill on her body, a feeling of fear and regret. It was as if all fame and fortune had stopped at this moment. What are you in a daze for? Why haven't you asked Boss Fan to leave yet? After a while, Fan Liqin heard Shu Yuantarek's cold voice. Following that, someone pulled at his body. His entire body was almost dragged out of the pool, leaving a long watermark on the ground. Little slut, after being a fallen phoenix for so many years, I don't believe that you haven't done that kind of thing. I don't believe that there's nothing going on between you and Pak Yuan. What rich young miss, you're not worthy. He was furious, and when he was pulled away, he suddenly exploded with rage. In any case, he had already thoroughly offended the Shu family. Even if he cursed a few more times, it wouldn't make any difference. Chapter 10:16. Fan Liqin's roar made everyone's scalps go numb. They all cautiously glanced at Jing Yunjiao, but found that her expression didn't change in the slightest. She didn't give off the slightest feeling of blasphemy. I'm sorry. Fan Liqin's daughter hurriedly bowed and said, then turned around and ran out. Shu Yuantarek's expression eased a little. Jiao, uncle will seek justice for you. Shu Yuantarek patted Jing Yunjiao's shoulder and said. Usually, at home, these 2 uncles would touch Jing Yunjiao's head and kill her at the slightest provocation. However, today, Jing Yunjiao's hairstyle was designed, so Shu Yuantarek restrained himself and settled for the next best thing. Many people already understood the meaning of this simple sentence. There was no need to talk about Shu Yuantarek's influence. A portion of the people here had received favors from Old Master Shu. The Shu family's medical connections spanned all over the world. They could get their hands on almost any kind of medicine. Who hadn't fallen sick before? Minor illnesses were fine, but the problem was that there were members of the family who had suffered from terminal illnesses. Of course, that was before the Jing family fell. The Jing family treated illnesses, and the Shu family sold medicine. No matter how rare something was, they would find it. The two families were like branches of the same tree. Although the Jing family no longer had an heir, this friendship was still counted on the Shu family's head. This influence wasn't small. Moreover, many people here knew in their hearts that the Li family, who had helped the Jing family set up big hospitals, hadn't learned the essence of the Jing family's medical skills. They could treat ordinary illnesses, but if they encountered a serious illness, they would have to find Old Master Shu. Although his medical skills couldn't compare to the Jing families of the past, he was definitely an outstanding doctor. Therefore, at this moment, there was no need for Shu Yuantarek to say anything. Fan Liqin would naturally be taken care of by someone else. Everyone. After Jing Yunjiao relaxed, Shu Yuantarek put his arm around her shoulder and said to the crowd, "Zhao grew up outside, but she's good at everything. As her uncle, I'm very pleased. Today, I've invited everyone here because Zhao is an adult today, and also to bear witness that she's no longer alone. The Shu family doesn't have many descendants to begin with. Although her surname isn't Shu, the blood of the Shu family flows in her body. In the future, she'll have a share of everything in the Shu family. I hope everyone will take good care of her in the future." After Shu Yuantarek calmed himself down, he spoke slowly. His voice had the ability to draw people's attention. "Congratulations to the three of you. Miss Jing is so smart and sensible. She has a bright future ahead of her." Hu Dad took the opportunity to speak first. Although he had crossed the line a little, Hu asked his daughter to be friends with Jing Yunjiao. It was natural for him to speak first. "Miss Jing, I wish you all the best." "I wish you all the best in the future," Zhu Minghai added. After that, the others hurriedly offered a few nice words. They were nothing more than praises or auspicious words. The gifts had already been presented, and someone was in charge of receiving and recording them at the entrance. Although the words weren't necessarily sincere, on a day like this, it was good to hear a little more. Jing Yunjiao thanked everyone politely. She was very elegant and courteous, as if she wasn't the one who had hit Fan Liqin. Not only that, but even Suchu and Xiao Haiqing were the same. The two of them were dressed in ladylike clothes and naturally restrained themselves. It was as if they were two different people. "Cousin, happy birthday." Among the well-wishers, a very abrupt voice suddenly rang out. Everyone was stunned when they heard it, and they all looked over. "This." Hu Dad glanced at the woman. After some thought, he decided to call her Miss. Then he asked, "Miss, what did you just say?" Chapter 10:17. There were only a few people in the Shu family. This woman who had suddenly appeared claimed to be Jing Yunjiao's cousin. Didn't that mean that she was Shu Yuantarek's daughter? But judging from the woman's age, she didn't seem to be Shu Yuantarek's daughter. She looked like she was in her 30s. Judging from the way she dressed and talked, she didn't seem to be related to the Shu family at all. "Hello, boss. I'm Yun Zhao's cousin. My name is Song Xiaoyu. I used to live in the same town as Yun Zhao. Her father is my uncle. Our families are quite close." Song Xiaoyu's face was flushed red. She looked embarrassed as she clutched her clothes with both hands. She looked uneasy. Jing Yunjiao was dressed beautifully, but this cousin of hers was wearing a simple turtleneck sweater. She was so hot that she was sweating under the heater. She looked out of place and made people ponder. Jing Yunjiao's eyes flashed, and a dangerous glint flashed across her eyes. She was the one who had personally ordered this person to leave. Her words carried weight in the family. Her two uncles had never interfered in her private affairs, so it was even more impossible for them to ask her to stay. Even if she wanted to stay, she wouldn't appear in front of her in such a manner. The only possibility was Shen Shi. If that was the case, She didn't know if Shunshi had specially arranged for this person to enter the Shu family or if it was just a coincidence. Hua's dad looked at Shu Yuanturek awkwardly and didn't ask any more questions. Shu Yuanturek frowned and said, "Who asked you to come?" "No one asked me to come. I'm a stylist, and I just happened to meet her. But I don't know why she's ignoring me." But after thinking about it, I realized that it wasn't easy for me to meet her, so I had to finish what I wanted to say. Otherwise, I would be letting my uncle down. Song Xiaoyu continued. Now that she had appeared, it would be even harder to explain if they asked her to shut up and leave. Although Jing Yunjiao didn't care about other people's opinions, she was now a member of the Shu family. She couldn't let others talk nonsense about her. The Shu family already had a lecherous and hedonistic Shuyu, so they definitely couldn't have another person with a bad reputation. Thinking of this, Jing Yunjiao suddenly smiled like a spring breeze. I wonder if Big Sister Song has something to say? Jing Yunjiao looked very friendly, which was a little unexpected. Song Xiaoyu relaxed. She was right. As long as everyone was present, Jing Yunjiao could only admit to it. "Cousin, I'm happy that you're celebrating your birthday, but why didn't you bring your uncle over? Uncle was really living a miserable life. Our family used to be good, but after you broke off your relationship with him, we didn't have a penny. His aunt is gone, and his little cousin is gone. If you don't care about him, he might starve to death one day," Song Xiaoyu hurriedly said. "Don't you still have a cousin?" Jing Yunjiao was still smiling, but her smile was as cold as ice. "Cousin is a boy. How could he know how to take care of people? Besides, he's still young. Now that you've found your family, it's time for him to enjoy his life. It wasn't easy for him to raise you all these years," Song Xiaoyu hurriedly said. After that, Shunshi hurriedly walked out and tugged at Song Xiaoyu. "Didn't I tell you not to come over? Mrs. Shu, you're really nice. Thank you for your kindness, but no matter what, I have to make things clear with my cousin. Otherwise, many relatives in town will say that she's unfilial." Song Xiaoyu struggled. Jing Yunjiao narrowed her eyes. Sure enough, she jumped out on her own. If she didn't jump out in the name of kindness in front of everyone, then after the guests left, she would have to face Shu Yuanturek's anger. Therefore, it wasn't worth it. So now she had to prove her innocence in front of everyone and gain their respect to prove her kindness. "What's the matter?" Shu Yuanturek stared at Shunshi and asked. Under everyone's gaze, it wasn't good to be too cold. Chapter 10:18. Shunshi was a little flustered and apologetic. Feeling the inquisitive eyes of the crowd, she hurriedly apologized. "I'm sorry, Zhao. I just saw someone dragging her out, so I asked out of curiosity. Knowing that she is your cousin, I thought about it and asked her to stay. We had a meal in an inconspicuous place, which could be considered as a polite way to repay the kindness of your adoptive parents. But I didn't expect that she would suddenly come here. I'll take her back now." She made it sound as if Jing Yunjiao treated his guests badly. "There's no need." Jing Yunjiao smiled. "Thanks to you, the dog came out and bit me. If I don't explain it clearly, I'm afraid that everyone will think that I, Jing Yunjiao, am a heartless villain. Who will dare to get along with me in the future?" Under the eyes of everyone, he still had to do what he needed to do to save face. "Zhao, did your aunt do something wrong?" Shunshi hurriedly said. She was a little flustered. Her gentle and kind appearance made people couldn't help but worry about her. "Aunt, you are an elder. I don't blame you if you did something wrong. But, my uncle knows my past very well. Why don't you know about it?" Jing Yunjiao paused and said, "After I was recognized, my uncles also investigated it themselves. A lot of things happened to me in the past. For example, I was abused by my adoptive father when I was young. I was neglected by my adoptive mother as a tool to ward off evil spirits for her children. Aunt, did you ignore these?" Shunshi then hurriedly said, "I don't know these things very well. And after all, you know this person. It's not good to drive her out like this. What's wrong with that?" Jing Yunjiao directly denied, and then said, "Aunt, you don't know what kind of suffering I suffered when I was young. Do you not know or do you not want to know? You've been hovering in front of me every day, asking me all sorts of questions. You can't wait to know everything about me. I've already said that even if Uncle didn't tell you what he found out, you should still remember what I've said. Could it be that you've forgotten? Shunxi's face changed. She knew that Jing Yunjiao was lying now. Recently, the two of them had been meeting almost every day, but every time, it was always her who sent Jing Yunjiao some food. Jing Yunjiao also didn't speak much, and most of the time, it was just probing words that didn't reach the point. You are the birthday girl. Whatever you say. I will ask someone to take her away. Shunxi moved forward instead of retreating. Cousin. Song Xiaoyu called again. She was still struggling. It seemed that she didn't give face to Shunxi. Jing Yunjiao's expression suddenly turned bleak. Don't you feel guilty calling me Biaomei? Which one of the Qiao family's relatives didn't mock me? Are you trying to ruin my reputation by suddenly coming to acknowledge me as your relative? You asked me to take care of my adoptive father. How ironic. 2 or 3 years ago, there were people who pretended to be my biological parents. Not only did my adoptive father not help me, he even beat them up and sold out everything about my childhood. It almost made me believe that those people were real. Not only that, they even found countless reporters to say that I was ungrateful, and everyone knew about it. However, there were already people who judged what happened back then for me. Whether or not I was heartless will be known after an investigation. You know very well in your heart whether or not you have any good intentions by criticizing me here. I don't want to talk about the past. That's why I asked you to leave. If I really pursue the matter, don't talk about taking care of my adoptive father. I can even directly sue him and send him to jail. Chapter 1019. Qiao Weiman was the man she was most afraid of and hated in her previous life, so she didn't choose to let him go to jail. Now, he had become a useless person. His daughter was missing, and his son despised him. His life was a problem, and he didn't even have any hope for the rest of his life. This kind of suffering was more torturous than going to jail. Zhao! Xu Yuantarek looked at her with distress. Auntie, take a look for yourself. You'll know if I'm repaying kindness with evil by chasing her away. Jing Yunjiao took out a wet tissue from her bag and raised her arm to wipe it. Suddenly, a few shocking scars appeared on her flawless arm. It was obvious that they were caused by cigarette butts. Shunxi's pupils shrank. Why hadn't she seen them before? Did your foster father do this? Xu Wancheng suddenly rushed over, grabbed her arm, and asked while gritting his teeth. Jing Yunjiao's skin was very good. It was delicate and tender, so it made people feel that she hadn't suffered much. However, this was caused by eating fruits nourished by the space all year round. There were only 2 places that she hadn't specially improved. One was her hands, and the other was the scars on her arm. She had done all kinds of work since she was young. Her hands were rough with frostbite, scalds, and calluses. Although the scars had faded a lot because of the space products, there were still some left. However, because she knew martial arts and medicine, people subconsciously thought that the scars were caused by hard work. Therefore, people rarely asked about them. As for the cigarette scars on her arm, if she wasn't wearing long sleeves, she would mostly cover them with ointment. She wouldn't show them to others. She could heal the scars, but she didn't want to. Every time she saw these scars, she would be very satisfied with her current life. She didn't even dare to be tired. This scar made everyone suck in a breath of cold air, and the way they looked at her immediately turned into sympathy. With these scars, it couldn't be said that she had falsely accused others in order to escape from her previous poverty, right? She had never thought that Jing Yunjiao had such a hidden card. She had always been calm about the past, so she didn't feel that she had been wronged. Zhao, I didn't expect you. Why don't you let us take a look? She immediately looked distressed and quickly made up for it. If Jing Yunjiao did not show the scar, no matter how much she said, others would think that she was looking for an excuse for herself, or even that she had wronged her adoptive parents. But now, it was different. Her body, hair, and skin belonged to her parents. Even if they were her adoptive parents, they should not have been so heavy-handed. Beating a child was nothing, but causing such devastating scars was abuse. If he really treated her like his own daughter, why would he leave these behind? Aunt Shun, my uncle still knows to check and ask. Even if he doesn't know about the scars on my body, he will know that I used to live a bad life. He shouldn't expose my scars at this time. Jing Yunjiao changed his words at this time. It was reasonable. Others would only think that she was disappointed, but they wouldn't think that she was rude. It's my fault. I was deceived. I thought that it would be good for you to meet your old friends. Auntie Shen, your words are getting more and more ridiculous. My god-grandfather, friends, and the others have already stayed at my house for a few days. They've been friends with me since a few years ago. Your words make it sound like I don't care about the people I used to know. What exactly do you mean? Jing Yunjiao mercilessly retorted. Using the relatives of the Qiao family to annoy her? Qiao Weimin had been crippled by her. Why would she be afraid of Song Xiaoyu? Chapter 1020. Jing Yunjiao pressed on step by step, and her eyes seemed to be full of disappointment towards Shunxi. However, Shunxi had left a good impression on others for so many years. Although they felt that she had done something wrong, they only felt that it should be a momentary mistake. Therefore, although they looked at Jing Yunjiao with some sympathy, they also felt that she shouldn't be so aggressive. Jing Yunjiao knew that Shunxi had left a bad impression on everyone over the years, so it was impossible for her to ask Shunxi to give her an explanation in front of so many people. Therefore, after her outburst, she changed the topic and said, "Uncle, I was also angry for a moment. I was a little rude just now. I hope you don't mind." These words were said by Jing Yunjiao to Shu Yuantarek. Many people praised her in their hearts that she was willing to let go after suffering such a big grievance. She was young, but not stupid. Every word completely guaranteed her own interests and let the people who bullied her suffer some hidden losses. Her mind was really not like a child who grew up in a small place. It's uncle's fault. On your birthday, you see one bad person after another. Shu Yuantarek looked at her guiltily. When his eyes swept to her arm, he seemed to be extremely distressed. This child was good at everything. She used him to scheme against anyone and didn't hide anything. He knew clearly about Fan Lechin, but he didn't expect that she didn't tell everything about herself. From such a serious scar, he could imagine how scared and helpless she would be at the moment of injury. It has nothing to do with uncle. Jing Yunjiao said a few words and stared at Song Xiaoyu, who was confused, and said casually, "The stylist this time was invited by Aunt Shun. Her requirements are very high. It seems that you are living a good life now. Who have you styled before?" When Song Xiaoyu heard this, she nervously looked at Shunxi. I just asked. They said that I was the assistant of the famous stylist Dao. I can be considered to have a bright future. Shunxi quickly said. Jing Yunjiao chuckled. Assistant, is it? A starving camel is still bigger than a horse. The assistant of a famous designer must have some standard, so you should know how to dress up, right? Song Xiaoyu didn't know what Jing Yunjiao was going to do. She just felt that her change was too strange. You don't have to be nervous. Just now, Auntie Shen said that I should repay my adoptive parents. Even though I don't agree, after thinking about it, you're still just a distant relative of theirs. We've also met a few times a few years ago. Now that we're able to meet here, it's fate. If you're really capable, I can introduce you to a better job, Jing Yunjiao suddenly said in a friendly tone. However, although these words seemed normal, it made people think more. They were cousins who had not seen each other for many years. Moreover, they were not related by blood. Was there a need to be polite? Most of these people had some property, especially those who had experienced wealth after poverty. They had all experienced the past of relatives begging for money. They were somewhat disgusted by this kind of shameless person. Moreover, as Jing Yunjiao said, they hadn't seen each other for a few years. They couldn't even be regarded as acquaintances. It would be strange if he didn't have ulterior motives for suddenly being so enthusiastic in this occasion. This Shunxi was too careless and simple. She actually believed the words of this kind of person. After being Mrs. Shu for so many years, it seemed that it was too low level to make this kind of mistake. After Jing Yunjiao finished speaking, he He didn't wait for Song Xiaoyu to reply. He directly said something to the staff. Song Xiaoyu waited in a trance. After a while, someone directly pushed a row of clothes over. An employee directly sat on the stool and put the makeup box directly in front of Song Xiaoyu. What do you mean by this? Song Xiaoyu frowned. She had a bad premonition. Jing Yunjiao curled the corner of his mouth. Whether it's a mule or a horse, I'll show it. If you have the ability, in the future, rely on your hands to make money rolling in. But it's not enough to just rely on me to praise you. You have to show everyone your ability. Anyway, I have nothing to do today. Chapter 10:21. Jing Yunjiao's eyes were full of sarcasm. She glanced at Shen Shi. Seeing her slightly stiff gaze, she directly looked back at her provocatively. The illusion of harmony on the surface would not last long. Shen Shi dared to come forward to find trouble with her on this occasion, which proved that she could not tolerate it and was not prepared to tolerate it. This was just right. A senior stylist had to know everything from makeup, hairstyle design, clothing and jewelry matching, and her requirements were very reasonable. After all, as the assistant of a great stylist at her age, if she couldn't be compared to some ordinary makeup artists, it would be too unreasonable. Moreover, she was gambling. Although she did not have much of an impression of this Song Xiaoyu, she was someone who had seen her before. If she thought about it carefully, there would still be some clues. Song Xiaoyu had indeed been admitted to a university in the capital, but in her memory, it was not a very famous institution. If she had been successful later on, Yi Qin would have kept mentioning her. But the truth was, after she was 12 years old, she did not seem to have heard of this cousin. Her memory of this cousin was when Song Xiaoyu had just been admitted to a university. After all, to be able to go to a luxurious metropolis like the capital was an amazing thing for people in a small town like her. At this time, Song Xiaoyu's face was a little conflicted. But after thinking about it, she still opened the makeup box. In fact, she did not have a good life in the capital. When she was admitted to a university in the capital, in the eyes of her relatives and friends, she brought honor to her ancestors. In fact, when she went to university, she realized that she was a pheasant that had crawled out of a grass nest. Her pride was not worth mentioning at all in front of others. She did not have a good family background and was not very outstanding in her profession. She studied design, but after graduating, she could not find a job at all. After going around in circles for a few years to make a living, she went home less and less to avoid embarrassment. Now she was 30 years old and only had one boyfriend. Her boyfriend's family disliked her for not having a decent dowry, so their marriage was going to be ruined. It just so happened that she had found a new job recently. She was doing odd jobs in a bridal shop owned by a famous stylist. She had accidentally seen the information of the customer that the boss wanted to serve. Then, she had said a few words and said that the girl looked like her cousin. Later, she didn't know why, but the assistant that was supposed to follow her was changed to her. No matter what, this was a good thing. Of course, she wouldn't refuse. Besides, she was curious whether that person was Jing Yunjiao, so she came to take a look. She didn't expect to be seen by Jing Yunjiao when she dragged another assistant to Jing Yunjiao's door to ask around. After opening the door, she realized that it was really her. That destitute wild girl had really become a phoenix. Song Xiaoyu's hand, which was holding the powder brush, trembled a little. She thought about it carefully. Although she had never seen the boss prepare for the customers, she had at least seen the makeup artists in the shop do it. It was just a face, so she could at least copy it. No matter what, she had studied design before, so she was the best at drawing pictures. With this thought in mind, he became much calmer. Then, he began to busy himself in front of the woman in front of him. On the portable makeup table in front of him, there were all kinds of bottles and jars. There were also many foreign languages. The powders were easy to guess, but the rest were difficult. She couldn't apply them all on her face. If she really did that, she would probably have to apply a thick layer, right? Although it was a beautiful idea, the reality was very harsh. In less than 10 minutes, her true colors were revealed, and the corners of the ladies' mouths twitched. Chapter 1022. Women like them might not be proficient in other things, but when it came to cosmetics, they definitely understood it very well. Although there were various brands of skincare products that they used on a daily basis, they could mix up other things, but they would never mix up those precious bottles that exuded fragrance. However, the fact was that the woman in front of them, who claimed to be the assistant of a great stylist, was applying those products that had the same function but different brands on the employee's face. The fragrance was mixed up and became a little thick and pungent. Not only that, this woman couldn't even distinguish the type of cosmetics, let alone recognize the brand. It was completely like graffiti. She didn't know how to draw at all, and she couldn't even apply it evenly. Now, the employee's face was smeared with small granules. It was really scary. If their makeup artist was at this level, they might as well do it themselves. It seems that Big Sister Song isn't very proficient in makeup. How about choosing clothes and jewelry? As an assistant, you should have a good point, right? Jing Yunjiao said again. At this time, someone had already brought the 3 groups of stylists over. When one of them saw Song Xiaoyu, a layer of panic suddenly appeared on her face. Song Xiaoyu was at a loss. She felt that Jing Yunjiao's words were like timely rain. She quickly nodded again. Makeup was difficult, but choosing clothes was easy. Besides, this was the Shu family. Those clothes were definitely the most beautiful and the most popular. There wouldn't be any mistakes if she randomly picked one. Soon, after pretending to gesture for a while, she directly took out one of the clothes. As for jewelry, it was a complete set of gold, jade, and gemstones. The gemstones were sparkling and noble, so there was no mistake. After a while, the things she picked out were placed in front of everyone. "I'm done," Song Xiaoyu said carefully. "What do you think?" Jing Yunjiao smiled and said amiably to the young ladies around him. Those girls' interest had already been piqued. It was just that they didn't know how to say it earlier. Now that Jing Yunjiao had spoken first, they immediately began to comment. "This dress is indeed beautiful, but it's a counterfeit. And the imitation is quite vulgar. What the hell are those 2 small wings on the shoulders? It seems to have been cut off by someone," one of them said. "That's not all. There are so many clothes and bags here. Some are real and some are fake. There are styles from a few years ago and there are also styles from this year. She can't even choose a real one. She even used a gem to match the fake ones. If I were to go out in such clothes, I would rather die." Another person immediately shook his head. "If you ask me, the scariest thing is this makeup. She can't even differentiate between water and breast. She can't even tidy up her own face. Which stupid stylist would dare to use such an assistant? Besides, were assistants so brave these days? I was just casually giving her a chance, but she was so self-righteous that she actually went forward to try it. Miss Jing, is this woman here to trick you?" They were all young people, so their words were a little direct, but they were very clear. Even a blind person could see that Song Xiaoyu was not qualified to appear here, no matter what identity she had. And now, after seeing Song Xiaoyu's ability, everyone couldn't help but think deeply. The Shu family only had Shen Shi, who was the mistress of the family. The details of this banquet couldn't be handled by a child like Jing Yunjiao. So, everything had to be approved by Shen Shi. A stylist was extremely important. But suddenly, a distant relative of Jing Yunjiao's suddenly appeared and said a lot of nonsense. She was even so bad. Who would believe that she didn't do it on purpose? Chapter 1023. Everyone had been through this before. Some families even had complicated personnel. Usually, there were too many things like scheming against each other and fighting for the family property. They all had some understanding of this kind of means. The reason why they thought it was a misunderstanding before was that Shen Shi usually treated people kindly. The second reason was that they thought it might be a coincidence. But now, the second reason seemed a bit too far-fetched. No one would be stupid enough to think that Shen Shi was really as kind and tolerant as she looked. Usually, Shen Shi could handle a lot of things in an orderly way without any flaws. Now, such a big mistake had happened right under their eyes. No matter how they looked at it, it seemed to be intentional. Maybe that kindness was just on the surface. After all, Mayor Shu loved this niece very much, and young Master Shu was a famous playboy. For this niece, Mayor Shu might do something to harm his son's interests. As a mother, how could she accept it? So she secretly thought of ways to ruin her reputation. Everyone had a scale in their hearts and thought a lot. They just didn't say it on the surface. The housekeeper brought a few stylists over. Shu Yuantarek also began to interrogate, "Who brought this Song Xiaoyu here?" "I." Suddenly, a man stood up. The man was thin and a little effeminate. He looked like he lacked masculinity. At this time, his forehead was sweating. "Is this how you serve?" Shu Yuantarek didn't seem to be angry, but his gloomy tone made people feel cold all over. "I'm sorry, Mayor Shu. The assistant who was supposed to come with me was sick, so I found a temporary replacement," the man said quickly. "You didn't tell me in advance when you changed the person?" Shu Yuantarek asked again. He asked, but no matter what the result was, the seed of suspicion had been planted. "No, Mrs. Shu is very busy. I don't think she would notice such a small thing, so," the man said carefully. After finishing, he said, "Mayor Shu, Miss Jing, I'm really sorry. I really didn't expect her to do such a thing. This time, I will return the money." Shu Yuantarek simply nodded. It was just a deal, and the other party had already admitted his mistake. In front of others, he couldn't use violence to suppress him. But anyway, he didn't have a future as a stylist. "Take them and get out of the Shu family." Shu Yuantarek snorted coldly. How vexing. First, there was Fan Lichin. Now, there was this Song Xiaoyu. She was purposely trying to make Zhao feel even more frustrated. Jing Yunjiao didn't continue to ask. From the beginning, she had always done things flawlessly. He couldn't find any evidence, and it was the same this time. Even if he continued to ask, he was afraid that the stylist wouldn't say anything. It was better to just ask her to leave now. In short, she already had a plan in her heart, so the truth was not important. Once the trouble was gone, the scene became much more harmonious. There were also many men and women of the same age who took the initiative to approach her and chat with her. As the host, Jing Yunjiao treated the guests courteously and left a good impression on them. But the banquet had been going on for so long, Jing Yunjiao felt that someone was missing. After thinking carefully, her mind was fixed on Shentong. She and Shentong were business partners. Previously, she had helped Xiao Haiqing audition, so their relationship was getting closer. So, naturally, she unconditionally invited Shentong to her birthday party. With Shentong's personality, it was reasonable to say that she should have arrived a long time ago. But so much time had passed, and Shentong was nowhere to be seen. "Who are you looking for?" "Your boyfriend." Hua Tianxian raised her eyebrows and laughed, deliberately provoking her. "Why is there no man on your birthday party?" Chapter 10:24. As soon as Hua Tianxian spoke, Xiao Haiqing and the rest also remembered. No wonder they felt that this birthday party wasn't perfect. It turned out that an important person was missing. "Yun Zhao, where's Li Shao?" Xiao Haiqing was both concerned and gossipy. Jing Yunjiao couldn't help but sweat. "How would I know? But the person I'm looking for isn't him." She didn't care about birthday gifts. Li Shaoyun usually treated her well and cared about her in all aspects. That was enough. Besides, everyone was already paying attention to him today. If he were to appear at this time, it would probably shock everyone present. Although others might not know that Li Shaoyun was old General Li's grandson, with his appearance, no matter where he appeared, he would be an eye-catching monster. Who else would I be waiting for if not him? Don't tell me you've changed your mind after such a long time. Xiao Haiqing deliberately joked. There were only a few men in this world who could subdue Yun Zhao. The way she looked at men was as if her eyes had grown to the top of her head, so those accidents were basically impossible. That Li Shaoyun was the same. To be able to so willingly go along with Jing Yun Zhao's whims for so long, other people definitely wouldn't be able to hit him. "Haiqing, I'm looking for Aunt Tong." Don't tell me you've forgotten about her. Jing Yunjiao was speechless. Xiao Haiqing frowned and looked around. I looked around when I came out just now. I didn't see her. Are you sure you invited her today? Did she agree to come? I invited her. I called her again last night to confirm so that she wouldn't forget. Jing Yunjiao sighed. But her phone is turned off now. I'm a little worried. Hua Tianxian also became serious when Shen Tong was mentioned. Jing do you think something happened to Aunt Tong? She's never like this. Every time my mother meets her, she arrives a long time ago. No, I'd better contact my mother and ask her to find someone to take a look. Now, many wretched uncles have designs on my Aunt Tong. It's been so many times. If it happens again this time, it'll be terrible. Hua Tianxian finished speaking and quickly made a call. Once the previous incident was mentioned, Jing Yunjiao had a thought flashed through his mind. He turned to look at Shun Shi, who was taking the initiative to chat with the ladies. This time, she wouldn't do it again, right? Why are you looking at her? Yunjiao, you seem to have a problem with Shun Shi from the beginning. You doubted her about Song Xiaoyu just now. Are you doubting her now about Aunt Tong? Xiao Haiqing felt it. Do you still remember the poisoned wine in Aunt Tong's house? She did it, but there's no evidence. She doesn't treat her sister as she seems. Jing Yunjiao said softly. Are you serious, Jing? My Aunt Tong has a very high opinion of Shun Shi. When I chatted with her before, she often said that she wasn't as lucky as Shun Shi. From childhood to adulthood, no matter what she did, Shun Shi was more serious than her. Unlike her, she didn't last long in everything, whether it was studying or acting. Hua Tianxian didn't agree. After hanging up the phone, she continued to recall, Aunt Tong also said that when she was abroad, she didn't have a good life and didn't want to ask for friends. Shun Shi helped her a lot. She said that Shun Shi was gentle and generous. She was able to marry Mei Shu because of her personal charm. Personal charm? Jing Yunjiao suddenly sneered. There were still people who knew the truth back then, but there were only a few of them. At that time, his eldest uncle got married very suddenly. Everyone felt strange. Did Aunt Tong say anything else? Or was there anything special between her and Shun Shi? Jing Yunjiao asked again. He didn't dare to let go of any information. Chapter 1025. Hua Tianxian thought for a long time before she said, Actually, my mother and I only got to know Aunt Tong better after she came back to China. Aunt Tong looks weak, but she's actually very strong and has a lot of self-esteem. That's why she never talks to her friends about money. She only talks about her son and the interesting things that happened abroad. As for the things that are related to Shun Shi, there are some. I remember that when she first came back to China, I went to her shop to play. She said several times that she wanted to visit Shun Shi, but she couldn't because of various things. Later, Aunt Tong said that she felt that Shun Shi's life in the Shu family wasn't very good. She didn't want her sister to know about it, so she was very worried. She even tried to find out more about Mei Shu. Also, there was one time when Shu Yu brought a concubine to the beauty salon, but they didn't recognize each other. Of course, I wasn't there at that time. It was my mother who told me. After all, Aunt Tong is Shu Yu's aunt. It's strange that they haven't met before. Hua Tianxian thought about it carefully and found that there were more and more strange things. Jing does your uncle have any eccentricities? Does he abuse Shun Shi at home? Hua Tianxian asked again. Jing Yunjiao's mouth twitched. My uncle is a gentleman. He's very principled. Then why doesn't Shun Shi dare to let him see her sister? I dare say that Mei Shu still doesn't know what his sister-in-law looks like. Hua Tianxian shook her head and sighed. Could it be that Aunt Tong is beautiful, so Shun Shi is afraid? Su Chu chimed in weakly. Hua Tianxian heard this and silently gave her a thumbs up. Girl, your idea has a bright future. What kind of person was Mei Shu? He often had to go out to socialize, and the number of beautiful women he had seen could probably be piled up to form a city. Unless Shun Shi was a pervert, she would only allow her husband to go out to meet others and not her sister. I'm just guessing. Aunt Tong is so beautiful and has acted in so many dramas. Most men of Uncle Shu's age have improper thoughts about her. Cousin, am I right? Suchu expressed her thoughts with an innocent face. Shunshi should know that first uncle isn't the kind of person who values beauty. Jing Yunjiao shook his head. First uncle was even able to cripple his own son, so his wisdom was obvious. He was definitely more careful than anyone else, so how could he be charmed by a woman? Moreover, there were many beautiful women in the world. Although Shentong was indeed beautiful, she wasn't the only beauty. Now that Shentong was a little older, the youthful beauties outside were much more charming than her. Although they were joking around, the worry in their hearts did not lessen at all. However, there was no news at all. They could only wait patiently. Jing Yunjiao also hoped that Shentong's disappearance was just a coincidence. The birthday party lasted for a long time. The Shu family was everywhere, and the sound of music was melodious. In the end, all parties left. When most of the guests left, Hu Tianxian received a call from Shu family's mother. Her expression immediately became serious. Jinger, something really happened to Aunt Tong. Hu Tianxian took a deep breath and said with an ugly expression, "She went out this morning. I heard that she went to the market in the northern suburbs to buy something, but she was recognized by a lunatic who chased her all the way. Aunt Tong was driving her own car and didn't know where she was going. In the end, she got into a car accident and was sent to a small hospital in the northern suburbs. She was saved, but the accident was very serious. Now, she has been transferred to the hospital in the city. Her brain was damaged and we don't know when she will wake up." Chapter 10:26. Hu Tianxian's expression was unusually ugly. She was definitely not joking. Everyone immediately quieted down. "Let's go and take a look." Jing Yunjiao was about to get up. However, Hu Tianxian pulled him back. "There's no need to go. She's out of danger now and hasn't woken up yet. My mother still has a few friends over there to help her. It's useless for us to go. At least she survived. Don't worry too much. We'll go after her condition stabilizes." Jing Yunjiao and the others thought about it and nodded in the end. Hu Tianxian's words made sense. Once she was in trouble, her friends would probably have gone to visit her. Patients needed to be quiet. Besides a few familiar faces, no one else would be able to see her. "What about the person who chased after her? Did you catch him?" Jing Yunjiao immediately asked. "No. My mother said that she had someone check the surveillance cameras on the road. The car was stolen. The driver wore a mask, a hat, and gloves. He was fully armed. The roads in the northern suburbs are not as congested as in the city. Moreover, she left early, so there was almost no one there. The person escaped and couldn't be found." Hu Tianxian shook her head. This was the most infuriating part. Xiao Haiqing and Suchu also knew Shentong. Putting aside the previous incident with the poisoned wine, both of their teams had a good impression of Shentong. Now that they heard that something like this had happened to her, their hearts were in a mess. "That damn pervert. If I catch him, I'll beat him up first." Suchu waved her fist angrily. "To be honest, although she's unconscious, I'm actually relieved," Jing Yunjiao said seriously. She had been worried that something had happened to Shunshi. It would be terrible if it was a life-threatening incident. After all, Shunshi was indeed a ruthless person. For her own benefit, she might not care about her sister's life. Therefore, it was good that Aunt Tong was found. From now on, she would definitely be able to stay alive. Jing Yunjiao's suspicion towards Shunshi made Hu Tianxian ponder deeply. After all, she didn't know Shunshi very well, unlike Jing Yunjiao, who lived under the same roof with her every day. However, if Shunshi was really like what Jing Yunjiao said, then this person was really too sinister and terrible. Before today, everyone's impression of Shunshi was fixed on the 4 words gentle and virtuous. Many people even said that the reason why Mayor Shu was so successful was because of this woman behind him. But today's incident was proof that Shunshi was not as gentle and magnanimous as she appeared to be. The more Hu Tianxian thought about it, the more she felt uncomfortable. She used to have a good impression of Shunshi, mainly because Aunt Tong often mentioned this person in front of her. But now, she had more doubts in her heart. Seeing with one's own eyes was better than hearing with one's ears. Didn't she see the big show that she had prepared today? If it weren't for the traces of abuse on Jing Yunjiao's body, she was afraid that no matter how she explained, she would have a reputation of biting the hand that fed her. At this time, the few of them were chatting when suddenly, a tut-tut sound came from the sky outside. There were only a few guests left in this house, except for a few familiar ones. The sky outside was already dark. It was originally very quiet, so even the slightest movement at this time would be very abrupt. "Don't tell me that your young master Li is here?" Hua Tianxian teased with a smile. Jing Yunjiao's mouth twitched. He got up and walked outside. "Jing you're obviously very happy. Don't hold it in," Hua Tianxian said again. "No." Jing Yunjiao refused to admit it. "No. I don't know who's the one who keeps looking outside today. On a birthday like this, you don't want your boyfriend to show up at all? Anyway, I don't believe it." Hua Tianxian raised her head and looked proud. Compared to these glowing flowers, the fireworks and firecrackers prepared tonight were all vulgar. "Ah Jiao, happy birthday." Li Xiaoyun landed on the ground and walked over. At the same time, he took out an exquisite little box and said, "Coming-of-age gift." Jing Yunjiao's heart thumped nervously. She took the box and opened it under Li Xiaoyun's watchful gaze. Jing Yunjiao had been worried that Li Xiaoyun would suddenly give her something that she could neither accept nor refuse at this time, such as a ring. But when she opened the box, she heaved a sigh of relief. There was a very small red bead in the box. The bead was engraved with patterns, and its fragrance was similar to the flower petals outside. In fact, it shone as brightly as the flower petals outside. It was extremely beautiful. This flower is called the Night Emperor. Its petals contain a phosphorescent substance. The duration of the petals' glow is limited. But this bead is something that I've specially extracted from the petals to study and solidify. As long as you and I live, its fragrance and light will last for a long time. Li Xiaoyun's gaze was gentle, as if he was waiting for her praise. Jing Yunjiao's eyes were a little wet. "Thank you, but..." Jing Yunjiao's eyes twinkled as she smiled and shook her head. "From now on this day every year, it'll be fine as long as it stays by my side." Chapter 10:28. Hearing this, Li Xiaoyun leaned over and gently touched her forehead. His lips were cold, making Jing Yunjiao's face a little hot. Not far away, Shu Yuantarek and Shu Wancheng saw this scene. One frowned and the other looked angry, as if they wanted to kill someone. Li Xiaoyun chuckled as if he couldn't feel their hostility. Originally, he also wanted to prepare a ring for this coming-of-age ceremony. According to his grandfather's wishes, he could propose and get engaged so that the Li family could have a successor sooner. However, in his opinion, it was not time yet. Ah Jiao was only halfway through acknowledging her ancestors. His matter was not urgent. Of course, seeing how touched she was in front of him, he knew that his days of abstinence would not last long. "By the way, you can keep this too." Li Xiaoyun raised his hand and a balloon fell from the sky. There was a cloth bag hanging under it. After receiving it, he directly stuffed it into Jing Yunjiao's hand. Jing Yunjiao opened it and took a look. "Flower species? Yes, this Night Emperor is very rare. I almost plucked that flower to extinction this time." So. Li Xiaoyun smiled evilly. Jing Yunjiao opened her mouth, her face full of shock. "Will the local residents be willing?" Jing Yunjiao looked at this dreamy scene and did not know what to say. "This is the reward for us brothers. Although this flower is beautiful, the breeding conditions are harsh, so it is not suitable for sale. The local situation is relatively poor, and the people are controlled by an organization that worships evil spirits. The previous task was to clean up the organization. After the task was done, they insisted on worshipping us as gods. After I refused, We simply asked for the Night Emperor as a reward to make them feel at ease. I see. No wonder you can get so many rare species at once. Jing Yunjiao glanced at him and said deliberately, but if you become a god in their eyes, won't you get more benefits? That place is very poor. The local people still use leaves to cover their bodies. When they see things flying in the sky, they are so scared that they crawl on the ground. I originally wanted them to agree to let the young people of the clan go to other places to see the world and find a way to survive, but they refused. A group of foolish people. Li Xiaoyun said disdainfully. He snorted softly and was very proud. Jing Yunjiao was speechless. So you brought this flower back just because it's more valuable? The moment I saw this flower, I wanted to give it to you. If I couldn't take it openly, I would have used force to suppress it and sweep it clean. Unlike now, I still left a few for them as souvenirs, Li Xiaoyun said without restraint. Jing Yunjiao blushed with shame. How many did he keep? He really had the cheek to say that. However, this flower was indeed breathtakingly beautiful, giving her the illusion that she was living in a dream. Chapter 1029. They were all about the same age. Li Xiaoyun was the oldest, but perhaps because of his skin color, the second oldest, Qi Zhong, looked a little older. Old third was a man with a mustache, but he didn't look old at all. Moreover, from his appearance, old third had a very low-key temperament. However, Li Xiaoyun had said before that old third was the most cunning among them. He had all kinds of ideas, was shrewd, and would never suffer losses. In addition to these, there was another point, and that was that he was somewhat vicious. Of course, that was only to his enemies. In contrast, the fourth oldest was different. He had a pair of peach blossom eyes, but there was a hint of melancholy in his eyes. His face was as white as paper and as warm as jade. Li Xiaoyun's previous evaluation of him was that he had an indifferent personality, just like those ancient Buddhist masters. However, although he was such a calm man, when he did things, he was very terrifying. He was proficient in all kinds of chemicals, and making all kinds of lethal bombs, poisons, and other things was a piece of cake for him. As for the fifth oldest, he had good eyesight, good hands and feet, good at hiding and stealing, and excellent at escaping. He was more cunning, and the least courageous. The sixth oldest. Jing Yunjiao's eyes jumped over. This guy had a pair of lecherous eyes. As long as he looked at a woman, his eyes would definitely light up. Usually, he would be the groom and the bride every night. He had the appearance of a handsome young man and was good at seducing women. His martial arts were good, but his ability to bewitch people was even better. It was said that many times, he had made the enemy's women change sides at the last minute. When he spoke sweet words, it was simply too sweet. Just as the sixth oldest was staring at him, Li Xiaoyun threw a cold knife at him. Suddenly, the sixth oldest smiled mischievously and lowered his head shyly with an aggrieved face. Jing Yunjiao thought that maybe one day, the sixth oldest would come to her for some medicine to cure some of his problems. Finally, there was the seventh oldest. It was said that he was very sensitive to mechanical things. Almost nothing with technological functions could hide in front of him, and he could dismantle it in minutes. When Li Xiaoyun was young, he cultivated in a very secretive place and learned all kinds of skills. These people were the descendants of the other families in the army. They followed Li Xiaoyun and were trained one after another. Each of them had their own specialties. However, in the beginning, there were more than just the 7 of them in this team. In fact, there were many of them. However, they were slowly eliminated or reduced to subordinates. Only the 7 of them stood out. They usually led the team on all kinds of missions. After so many years, they rarely lost. Chapter 1030. Jing Yunjiao pursed her lips and smiled, then glanced at Xu Wancheng. She reached out and tugged at the corner of his clothes, calling softly, "Second uncle?" Usually, Jing Yunjiao almost never acted coquettishly, doing things with propriety and politeness like an adult. Many times, Xu Wancheng felt that his niece was the same age as him, but now that he heard Jing Yunjiao's soft voice, he instantly softened. His whole body seemed to be floating, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise. Xiao Jiao, do you really like him? Xu Wencheng coughed dryly, trying hard to restrain his excitement, and asked seriously. Jing Yunjiao nodded. What's so good about him? Xu Wencheng still didn't give up and looked at Li Xiaoyun provocatively. He has no selfish motives towards me, she said truthfully. It was impossible for her to fall in love with someone without a reason. She was naturally suspicious, cold, and a little arrogant. Although she had male friends, it was still different. If Gan Jinchen or Tang Zihua stood in her position as her boyfriend, they wouldn't be able to do what Li Xiaoyun did. She only wanted to find someone who treated her well. Although it was a little selfish, this was something that couldn't be changed. Xiao Jiao, men are different before and after marriage. You are beautiful, so of course he will spend all his effort to pursue you. But when he really gets you, then it's hard to say. Xu Wencheng said earnestly and deliberately. Letting his precious niece be taken away by Li Xiaoyun, he felt a little uncomfortable in his heart. Second Uncle Xu, don't compare me with ordinary men. Li Xiaoyun raised his eyebrows and directly retorted. H, you can say that you don't like my Xiao Jiao's appearance. That's right, and her company. Xiao Jiao is young, beautiful, and rich. What kind of man can't she find? Xu Wencheng directly glared back. Second uncle, don't worry. I won't touch a single cent of her assets. Moreover, I can get someone to notarize the assets tomorrow and change all the assets under my name to her name. As for what I like about her, Second Uncle Xu, when I met her Jiao, she was still a Cinderella. I saw her walk step by step to where she is today. That's enough to prove it. Li Xiaoyun's eyes shone with confidence. A moment ago, in front of Jing Yunjiao, this man was unbelievably gentle, but now he was full of thorns. Xu Wencheng choked and spat out a mouthful of blood. He gritted his teeth and thought for a long time before saying, there is one thing that I'm afraid you won't agree to, right? Xiao Jiao's identity is a little special. In the future, she must have a child with her surname to inherit her medical skills. Who knows, she might even have to give birth to another child with the surname Xu to inherit her pharmaceutical skills. Xu Wencheng snorted coldly. He did not believe that Li Xiaoyun could accept this. Any man would be unhappy to hear that their child had taken on another person's surname, right? Second Uncle Xu, I think you're thinking too much. Li Xiaoyun suddenly laughed and was very arrogant. If our Jiao is willing, it doesn't matter if the child's surname is Jing. After all, it's my child. Of course, there's no need for the surname Xu. Second Uncle Xu, you're also a man. You should be able to give birth yourself, right? When the time comes, I'll come back with our Jiao to visit the elders often. If she wants to teach her future cousins how to make medicine, I'll be happy to cooperate. Li Xiaoyun emphasized the words together, as if he was afraid that Xu Wencheng would ignore it. You agree? What if you only have one child and the surname is Jing? Xu Wencheng was a little doubtful. Why not? The child is my Jiao's. What's the difference if it's her or mine? Li Xiaoyun chuckled, but his expression was very serious. Chapter 1031. Li Xiaoyun had some understanding of the Jing family's situation. A family with a 1,000-year-old legacy naturally couldn't be destroyed. As for the Li family, the old man was very magnanimous. Although he wanted to have a great-grandson and pass down the bloodline, it had nothing to do with the family name. Moreover, ever since Jing Yunjiao acknowledged his family, he had already thought of this and mentioned it to the old man in advance. The old man then said that it was a blessing for the Li family to be able to provide half of the bloodline inheritance of the Jing family's 1,000-year-old miracle doctor. He also said that during the war, the doctors from the Jing family and the Xu family's huge amount of medicine had helped countless soldiers, so they were indebted to them. Li Xiaoyun's words completely stunned Xu Wencheng. He frowned and stared at Li Xiaoyun as if he wanted to bore a hole through him. What are you trying to do? After a while, he squeezed out a sentence. Trying to do? Does marrying a wife and having a child count? Li Xiaoyun replied faintly. Jing Yunzhao's face turned red. Xiao Haiqing and the rest couldn't help but laugh. All right, Yuan Cheng, we've asked enough. Why are we blindly interfering with the younger generation's matters? The old man doesn't even care. Moreover, don't think that I don't know what you're feeling in your heart. Shu Yuantarek couldn't help but laugh. Just based on the fact that Li Xiaoyun dared to guarantee in front of him that he could have a child to inherit the Jing family business, he had nothing to say. As for what Shu Wancheng cared about, as the eldest brother, he was very clear about it. Li Xiaoyun was only 4 or 5 years younger than Yuan Cheng. This lad from the Li family had always been a legendary figure before he was in his teens, causing the boys from various families to be envious, jealous, and hateful. Almost everyone had been stimulated by his excellence, including his younger brother. At this moment, Shu Wancheng awkwardly turned his face away and snorted coldly. If he had known that this kid would become his nephew's son-in-law one day, he would have gone to the Li family to ask him out and teach him a lesson. Since Xiao Zhao likes it, then, reluctantly let it be. But remember, he's just a boyfriend. If he's not qualified, we can still change, Shu Wancheng said harshly. But these words sounded weak and powerless. Second Uncle Shu, instead of worrying about me and Xiao Zhao, why don't you find us a second aunt first? Otherwise, my cousin will be younger than my son. After Li Xiaoyun finished speaking, he smiled and hugged Jing Yunzhao. Ah Zhao, I haven't seen Grandpa for a long time. I still want to talk to him. As soon as he finished speaking, Shu Yuantarek, Jing Yunzhao, and the others walked back into the house, along with their brothers. When the brothers walked past Shu Wancheng, they all grinned and said, "Hello, eldest sister-in-law's second uncle." Eldest sister-in-law's second uncle has worked hard. When Shu Wancheng heard this, his face turned green. He wanted to cry but had no tears. Almost everyone had left, leaving only 2 little girls rolling around in the flower petals. How childish. Xiao Haiqing and Su Chu were scared by Shu Wancheng's stare. They raised their heads and looked at him. Second Uncle Shu, is there anything else? In the sky, the helicopter had already dispersed. Suddenly, the fireworks exploded, resonating with the red lights on the ground. It was a beautiful scene. Shu Wancheng was stunned. Are you an actress? After a few seconds, Shu Wancheng walked over and asked. Xiao Haiqing nodded. What roles have you acted in? Shu Wancheng asked again. Just some small roles. It's not worth mentioning. Xiao Haiqing was stunned. Did second Uncle Shu go crazy because of young Master Li? Look, his eyeballs are not moving. What do you think is good about Li Xiaoyun? Shu Wancheng asked again. Su Chu looked at him and suddenly felt that second Uncle Shu was very strange. She thought for a while and ran away. Chapter 1032. Xiao Haiqing heard Shu Wancheng's words. It seemed like he was hinting that she was interested in Li Xiaoyun. Her face instantly darkened. Second Uncle Shu, young Master Li treats Yunzhao very well. Xiao Haiqing frowned. She could joke about other things, but she couldn't joke about men. Otherwise, even a strong friendship wouldn't be able to withstand it. Ever since she met Jing Yunzhao, there had never been any misunderstandings. Now, she would never allow anyone to doubt her feelings for Jing Yunzhao, not even second Uncle Shu in front of her. Shu Wancheng frowned. He didn't feel that his question was inappropriate. But there are still many people who treat her well. She is still young. Xiao Haiqing didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Could it be that he was provoked by Jing Yunzhao, so he ran over to her to seek comfort? Was it because she had asked him to send her off previously? Was that why he thought he was closer to her? Second Uncle Shu, I am on Yunzhao's side unconditionally. Yunzhao restrained herself because you are her uncle. But since you are so persistent, I have no choice but to be impolite. Xiao Haiqing was still holding a few flower petals in her hand. She pinched them and smiled. Although Yunzhao and I were classmates in our first year of high school, we didn't interact much in the first half of the year. At that time, her reputation wasn't good, and she was very quiet. She didn't care about anyone who provoked her, so I looked down on her. Then, one day, she seemed to have an epiphany. She became sharp and ruthless to anyone who bullied her. She surprised me, and that's why we became good friends. I don't know why she treats me differently from others, but I'm clear that it's hard for anyone else to enter her heart. Even becoming friends is hard to come by. For Li Xiao to be able to become her boyfriend means that he's already inseparable from her life. Without him, Yun Zhao might still be able to live her life as usual, but I can guarantee that there will always be a piece missing in her heart that no one can replace. Although you are her uncle, you are late. You left her outside for so many years, and now you suddenly appear and want to interfere with her love life. I think that is too much. Xiao Haiqing smiled from the beginning to the end. She was polite. As an elder, it was natural for him to interfere with Jing Yunjiao. But the truth was, it also depended on whether the other party's personality was suitable. Jing Yunjiao had always been a suspicious person. Towards her family and friends, she was always worried about her gains and losses. As her family, they had to support her. Only then could she relax and be happy. And to put it bluntly, although Xu Wancheng and Jing Yunjiao were related by blood, compared to Li Xiaoyun, he was more important. Xu Wancheng pursed his lips as he listened. His eyes were deep in thought. He naturally knew that Li Xiaoyun must be outstanding to be able to gain Xiao Zhao's approval, but he was reluctant. She was only 18 years old, and Li Xiaoyun was already 27 years old. Such an old man must be anxious to get married, but he still wanted Xiao Zhao to stay at home for a few more years. Looking at Xu Wancheng's uncertain face, Xiao Haiqing's heart was pounding. What was this person thinking? If it wasn't for the fact that he was Yun Zhao's uncle, he really wanted to knock him out and forget about it. His dilly-dallying really made people anxious. Wasn't it just his niece having a boyfriend? He was a man, and he would find a wife in the future. Wasn't it the same? If that guy doesn't treat Yun Zhao well, you have to tell me, Xu Wancheng said after a while. Xiao Haiqing rolled her eyes and nodded with a smile. However, she couldn't help but grumble in her heart. Compared to Li Xiaoyun treating Jing Yunjiao badly, she believed that Xu Wancheng would find an aunt who couldn't accept Jing Yunjiao in the future. Chapter 1033. There were some things that couldn't be said in front of Xu Wancheng, so after Xiao Haiqing responded, she quickly returned to the living room. Thinking of Su Chu, she couldn't help but scold her for being disloyal and snorted softly. Xu Wancheng looked at Xiao Haiqing's back and frowned. He glanced at the place where she had just been and shook his head. It was a mess. She was already so old, yet she still liked flowers so much. Wasn't it just a few pieces of glowing stuff? What was there to see? However, her figure was not bad and her looks were passable. It was just that her temper wasn't very good. She was too straightforward. With this kind of temper, she would be at a disadvantage outside, right? Xu Wancheng stayed outside alone for a long time, muttering to himself while looking at the beautiful scenery. His face was full of disdain, but there was some contradiction in his heart. He felt that Li Xiaoyun was indeed attentive and not bad. Xu Yuantarek and the others ignored his schizophrenia and didn't try to persuade him at all. As Xu Wancheng's elder brother, Xu Yuantarek was very clear in his heart that his younger brother definitely knew that Li Xiaoyun was very good, but he just wanted to go against him. Just like any father-in-law in the world, he didn't like his son-in-law no matter how he looked at him. Even if an angel came, he still felt that he wasn't worthy of his daughter. The lively day ended with the beautiful and splendid fireworks. In the night, Jing Yunjiao slept deeply. In her dream, she was surrounded by a sea of red, and the man who made her heart flutter fell from the sky. The next day, the house was still filled with the smell of yesterday's alcohol and the air was very soft. However, before Jing Yunjiao went downstairs, the living room was a serious scene. "Brother, do you believe that yesterday's incident was a coincidence? Does that Song Xiaoyu have anything to do with sister-in-law?" Xu Wancheng's face was cold as he started to settle old scores. Xu Yuantarek sighed and leaned back. A trace of deep meaning flashed in his eyes. He had long felt that something was wrong. Zhao was very polite to everyone in the Shu family except for Shu Yu and Shun Shi, even if they were the housekeeper or the servants. Moreover, she and Shun Shi seemed to be at loggerheads from the first day they met. This situation was somewhat abnormal. It was not possible that Zhao did not like Shun Shi to be her aunt, because Shun Shi was a person who was kind to everyone. Even if she did not like them in her heart, she would not hit a smiling person. Unless something happened between the two of them that they didn't know about. Yesterday, I heard that sister-in-law's younger sister was hospitalized. Xiao Zhao seemed to be very concerned about her. Brother, could it be related to that woman? Xu Wancheng opened his mouth again and continued, the two sisters can't possibly like the younger sister and not the older sister, right? Could it be that younger sister said something in front of Xiao Zhao? Shun Shi's younger sister is called Shen Tong. Xu Yuantarek thought for a moment and asked, Brother, you haven't seen her before? Seeing Xu Yuantarek's reaction, Xu Wancheng also felt a little strange. I haven't seen any of your sister-in-law's relatives. Xu Yuantarek shook his head. When I first got married, I also mentioned that I wanted to see her, but at that time, your sister-in-law's parents had passed away and her younger sister had gone abroad, so it was delayed until now. A long time ago, someone suddenly told me that my younger sister-in-law had returned from abroad. At that time, I told Shun Shi again and asked if she wanted to invite the other party to the house, but Shun Shi refused. At that time, Shun Shi said that he was busy with work, and that Shen Tong usually found it difficult to find time, so there was no need to make special arrangements. He thought that anyway, this marriage was similar to a contract. Since Shun Shi cared about it, he did not pay attention to it anymore. Chapter 1034. Xu Wancheng was shocked. His brother and sister-in-law had been married for more than 20 years, but his brother had never even met his sister-in-law. This was too unbelievable. Even if the relationship between the husband and wife was not good, their families would still have some interactions, right? Then you don't know what sister-in-law's sister is doing now? And who she married? Xiao Zhao seems to be very close to her. I think it's necessary to investigate, right? Xu Wancheng said as he took the tea from the servant. I know a bit about it. I remember that your sister-in-law once mentioned that her sister was an actress. She was quite famous in the past, but she was bullied by people in the industry and got pregnant. At that time, your sister-in-law felt very guilty and said that she shouldn't have let her enter the entertainment industry. Otherwise, she wouldn't have become like that. So, I think she must be a woman who doesn't know how to behave properly. Shun Shi thought that she was a bad influence and didn't want me to meet her. It's normal. Xu Yuantarek dug through his memories and recalled what Shun Shi had said. Another actress? Xu Yuancheng's brows were furrowed into a knot. He couldn't help but feel unhappy when he thought of Xiao Zhao's friend. Brother, Xiao Zhao should be going to the hospital to visit your sister-in-law in the next 2 days. Why don't you go with her and see if she's round, square, or flat? If her character is bad, it's best to think of a way to stop Xiao Zhao from interacting with her. Of course, if she's not bad, then sister-in-law, there must be something wrong with her. Xu Wancheng reminded him. Xu Yuantarek nodded. There were many things that needed to be done. Yesterday, in front of so many people, he couldn't interrogate the stylist. But now, he didn't have to worry so much. After Jing Yunjiao went downstairs, the two uncles suddenly had a tacit understanding and changed from serious to caring. The birthday party was over, so Jing Yunjiao didn't want to keep Grandpa Gan and the others at the Shu family for too long. After all, it was the new year, and the Gan family had to have a reunion dinner. After breakfast, the Tang family's car arrived and picked up Tang Zihua. Xu Wancheng continued to be the driver and was responsible for sending Grandpa Gan and the others home. The Shu family immediately became cold and cheerless. Xiao Haiqing's one-day holiday was over. She had gone to the set. In order to facilitate the filming, she probably would not come back at night. Jing Yunjiao suddenly felt empty around him. However, there was something outside that could divert Jing Yunjiao's attention. In a single night, the incident of the female student being forced to death by Fan Lechine had once again fermented, and it was getting out of hand. In the past, countless people had cursed the female student for being unfilial and angering her mother to death. Now, there were even more people who were repenting for their lost lives. Fan Lechine's deceit of the people and his attitude of disregarding life made countless people furious. This time, Fan Lechine was like a rat crossing the street. Everyone wanted to beat him up. Fan Lechine's electronics brand instantly became the target of public criticism. The resistance was great, and many of the franchised stores were collectively condemned. The entrance was a mess, and under the pressure of the public, they couldn't even open their doors. Before this, Jing Yunjiao had asked Pak Yuan to investigate the flaws in Fan Lechine's products. He took this opportunity to announce it. However, in terms of Fan Lechine's current situation, this news was just a drop in the ocean. This was because other media outlets also took advantage of this and ruthlessly set fire to it. Fan Lechine would let people exaggerate the facts of the news and cause the death of the female student. Naturally, other people would do the same. Thus, this day, Fan Lechine's evil deeds were everywhere. Chapter 1035. It was no secret that Fan Lechine was a pervert. Therefore, there were people who specifically targeted this point and fiercely reported it, saying that he had forced female students and had kept many women as his mistress. In addition, there were also people who revealed the dangers and side effects of his company's products. The truth and the lies were mixed together, and it was already deeply ingrained in the eyes of the public. Even if someone tried to forcefully clear his name, it would be impossible. Such a large company with so many products had suddenly been removed from the shelves of various shopping malls. His own exclusive stores couldn't even open. The loss was not small. Fan Lechine only felt that he was in a terrible fix. However, the public had always been short-tempered. As long as he could endure this period of time, it was still possible for him to rise again in the future. After all, a starving camel was still bigger than a horse. However, the problem was that everyone now knew that he had offended the Shu family. Without even waiting for Shu Yuantarek to open his mouth, there were already people who had taken the initiative to investigate the company's accounts. With internal and external troubles, it was simply unbearable. Jing Yunjiao knew in her heart that she didn't even need to personally do anything. Fan Lechine could walk step by step towards his own death. What did the public hate the most? It was deception, especially when it was a shocking lie that involved a human life. If Fan Lechine hadn't wronged that female student over the compensation, she wouldn't have been so stupid as to commit suicide. She had died because of public opinion. It could be said that everyone who had attacked her online and in real life were her murderers, and the mastermind who had forced everyone to become her murderers was the high and mighty boss Fan. In the Fan family's mansion, the servants had almost all left. In the past, being a nanny for a large family like the Fan family not only paid a high salary, but also gave them a lot of face. However, now that people heard the 3 words Fan Lechine, they immediately became very sensitive. No one wanted to be implicated by a boss who didn't have many feelings for them. One by one, they took their pay from Mrs. Fan and hurriedly left. They're all a bunch of snobs. If they want to leave, then leave. Why are you still paying them? Wastrel woman. Fan Lechine sat on the sofa and was so angry that he directly smashed his cup. Her twin sons shrank back in fear and hid behind Mrs. Fan. Mrs. Fan was dressed plainly. She wasn't young and looked a little submissive. Although she hated the man in front of her, she didn't want to continue being a woman of the Fan family. She wasn't jealous or dissatisfied with the pair of sons who didn't belong to her. You scared them. Mrs. Fan's voice was hoarse and weak. After a while, one of them couldn't stand it anymore and hurriedly went forward to help, pulling the security guards away. The security guard was tall and strong, so Fan Lechine was naturally no match for him. Another wave of insults immediately followed. There were quite a number of reporters surrounding the Fan Liqin residence. The security guards had left their posts without permission, so they did not stop them. As a result, Fan Liqin's fierce side was captured on camera. The mother and daughter hugged each other and cried bitterly. Their bruised and swollen faces were truly frightening. Looking at the two illegitimate children, they were so frightened that they curled up in bed, looking pitiful and miserable. These reporters were already worried that they wouldn't be able to dig up any new information about Fan Liqin. Now that they had a chance, it would be a waste not to use it. Soon, the public outside learned of another crime of him abusing his wife and daughter. Mrs. Fan directly filed for divorce in court. Although it would still take some time, the future was still somewhat bright. At the same time, the Tan parents also saw the news. When they saw the picture of their grandson curled up in a corner and crying, they were extremely distressed. Thinking about it again, if they took the children back now, they might be able to ask Fan Liqin to pay a large sum of money to support them. Naturally, they couldn't help but get involved. It was a pity that these parents didn't have a thorough understanding of certain matters. Fan Liqin was indeed rich, but it was only temporary. Chapter 1037. Compared to Tanxi's parents, Tanxi's attitude towards her son was a bit better. She had been crazy these past few days, but when she saw her son's frightened appearance, she immediately cried until she no longer resembled a human. She was vain and loved money, but there had been times when she longed for love and family. The mistakes she had made these past few years had caused her to lose all standing and reputation. She even disliked this unbearably dirty body of hers. After all, she had carried her son for 10 months. Although the child was still young, he knew how to be considerate of his mother. He wasn't like her parents, who had always instigated and controlled him, using him as a tool to make money. Fan Liqin's matter had been circulating outside for quite a few days, and there were signs of it slowly dying out. But at this time, Fan Liqin had already changed into a different person. And the suppression of other companies had already begun. This noisy new year didn't make him feel the slightest bit of joy. There was only endless despair and pain. The small Fan Liqin family naturally couldn't fight against so many big families. It didn't take long for them to completely decline. The person in charge of the media company that Fan Liqin had invested in was arrested for spreading rumors, damaging other people's reputations and causing death. Fan Liqin's company also completely stopped operating. The stock price plummeted, debts came to an end, and the couple divorced. Even his most beloved son had now been snatched away by a woman he had previously looked down on. He had fallen from heaven to hell in a single day. If you asked who Fan Liqin hated the most, it would probably only be Jing Yunjiao and Pak Yuan. The moment Fan Liqin's family property had been confiscated and he had been forced to live on the streets, Pak Yuan had appeared in front of him with an arrogant attitude that he had previously been unable to accept. Pak Yuan was a gentleman. He was never a man who would hit someone when they were down, but Jing Yunjiao was. She didn't care if others didn't treat her well. It didn't matter if others misunderstood or disliked her, but she couldn't tolerate anyone insulting or bullying her. Fan Liqin should have been prepared to be tortured to death by her after what she said. She held a grudge like that, but what could she do? A fallen phoenix was inferior to a chicken. Without power and money, Fan Liqin couldn't live an easy life. Just those women that he had looked down on before were enough to make him wish he was dead. A person like Fan Liqin should always be allowed to see the person he hated standing above him, with no possibility of surpassing him in this lifetime. As for the Tan family, there was an additional pair of children. After being happy for a few days, the parents thought of a practical problem. The two of them were old, and their pension was pitifully small. Now, it was really difficult for them to raise 2 more grandchildren. Xia, you're still young. Hurry up and find someone to marry. I really don't know why I gave birth to you in the first place. Mother Tan complained. She still doted on her daughter, but she felt annoyed after looking at her for a long time. Especially now that Pak Yuan was doing so well, her daughter couldn't even see her relatives and friends because of the rumors. She had lost her whole family. She felt terrible in her heart and kept thinking that it would be good if she could start over again. The more she thought about it, the more resentful she felt. When Tan-shi heard this, she looked at her parents expressionlessly and walked over. "Mom, I want money. What do you want money for again?" When Mother Tan heard this, she was instantly angry. "Are you going to give it or not? If you don't give it, I won't change the child's surname." Tan-shi had already grasped her parents' Achilles' heel. "How much do you want this time?" Mother Tan was a little unhappy. However, she knew that her husband was most dissatisfied that she didn't give birth to a son in this lifetime. Fortunately, now that her grandson could also become a grandson, the Tan family would have a successor in the future, so the surname had to be changed. 30,000. Tan-shi was straightforward. Chapter 1038. 30,000 yuan wasn't a small sum for the Tan family. Moreover, Tan-shi had been asking for money for various reasons over the past few days. At first, she said that she wanted to sue Fan Lechin to get the child back. Therefore, Mr. and Mrs. Tan were very straightforward and gave her 100,000 yuan. Later, she said that the child was taking the child for a full body checkup. They felt that it was reasonable, so they gave her another 10,000 yuan. Almost every day, there were various reasons that forced them to agree. In total, they had already given their daughter 200,000 yuan. Now that they heard that Tan-shi was asking for money, Mr. and Mrs. Tan felt that something was wrong. "You're out of money, You've been asking for a lot of money recently. Did you spend it all on lawyers? I don't believe you. Give me a bill," Mr. Tan suddenly said. When Tan-shi heard that, she snorted coldly. "No." Mr. Tan was about to hit her. When Tan-shi saw that, she dragged her two sons out of the door. "I'm going to take our sons out shopping. If you want to hit me, we'll talk about it later." Mr. Tan's anger was stuck in his chest, and he couldn't spit it out. After Tan-shi left, there was no news of her. The grandson in their hands was gone, and the parents were so anxious that they were going crazy. Most importantly, if the two of them fell sick and died, who would clean up after them? However, no matter how angry they were, they couldn't find her. It was as if she had disappeared from the face of the earth. Before she left, Tan-shi sent a text message to Pak Yuan. It was a simple "I'm sorry." However, whether it was a text message or a phone call, Pak Yuan had completely blocked Tan-shi's name. Therefore, he didn't receive any messages. He was destined to have no more interactions with this person. After the new year, everything slowly quieted down. Jing Yunjiao read books, studied medicine, and fell in love every day. His days were very fulfilling. When school was about to start, they found a day when Xiao Haiqing wasn't busy. The two of them went to the hospital to visit Shentong, and eldest uncle personally drove her to the hospital. Some time ago, the number of friends who had almost filled up the ward had finally decreased. After all, everyone was more busy after the new year. Shentong's staff had hired a professional nurse to take care of her. In addition, her son had returned from abroad, so she could rest assured. Shentong was still unconscious. When Jing Yunjiao arrived, she was lying on the bed. Her face was pale, and she looked extremely pitiful. She was being kept alive by an 4-drip, but there was a fair-skinned boy sitting beside her. He looked worried and tired. This boy should be Aunt Tong's son, Shen Hong. Jing Yunjiao had often heard Hua Tianxian mention this person before. He had heard that he was doing very well abroad. He was only 21 or 22 years old and was studying at a famous university overseas. He was about to graduate soon and had participated in various competitions. Since he was in his teens, he had won many awards. He was the man that Shen Tong was most proud of. However, this was the first time Jing Yunjiao had seen him. The moment Shen Hong saw someone coming over, he immediately got up to welcome. After all, Xu Yuantarek was an elder. Although he was unfamiliar with the person on the bed and the person in front of him, he was still this boy's uncle. Therefore, he took the initiative to ask, How is your mother? The doctor said that her condition is stable, but we don't know when she will wake up. It could be 10 days or half a month, or it could be a year and a half, or it could even be that she will never wake up. Shen Hong smiled bitterly. Although he had lived abroad since he was young, he spoke fluent Mandarin. But it's okay. Mommy has always been lucky. I believe that she will wake up. By the way, I still don't know who you are. Shen Hong restrained his sadness and asked politely. Chapter 1039. Xu Yuantarek felt a little awkward. They were close relatives, but now they didn't even know each other. It was really embarrassing. I'm your uncle. I didn't expect to meet you in this way. Xu Yuantarek patted Shen Hong's shoulder. You're so young, but you're already shouldering such a big responsibility. You're really amazing. If you need anything, just let me know. I'll help as much as I can. Shen Hong was stunned when he heard this. Uncle? This kind of creature? No, it was this kind of name. Although it wasn't the first time he heard it, it was really quite unfamiliar. He knew that he had an aunt, but he had never met her. He had only seen the photo his mother sent him. She was quite beautiful and looked very gentle and kind. He also heard that his mother was very well taken care of by her in the capital. Unfortunately, when his mother was in the accident, his aunt had already come over. He had only been back for 2 or 3 days, so he didn't meet her. Thank you, uncle. Shen Hong quickly expressed his gratitude. Then, he looked at the 2 girls. A trace of surprise and affection flashed in his eyes. This is my niece. She's almost like a daughter. She's also your cousin. Her name is Jing Yunjiao. Next to her is her classmate, Xiao Haiqing. The 2 of them are very close to your mother. This time, they specially came to see her. Xu Yuantarek introduced. He couldn't help but have a good impression of Shen Hong. This child looked very talented and was very handsome. He could see that he was somewhat similar to Shen Tong on the hospital bed, but he was more masculine. The pair of starry eyes under the sword-like eyebrows were especially beautiful. He was also very tall, about 1.85 meters. His body was neither fat nor thin, and he looked very strong. His every move made him look very cultured. Even he couldn't help but feel a bit of affection. Originally, he thought that Shen Tong was probably not a good person. But now that he saw that her son was so sensible, he had some doubts in his heart. Parents had a great influence on their children. Shen Tong raised her son alone. It was rare for her to be able to raise a child like this. At this time, Shen Hong greeted Jing Yunjiao and Xiao Haiqing respectively. He brought 3 clean cups and poured water into them. Jing Yunjiao sat beside Shen Tong's bed. Xiao Haiqing stared at him. Yunjiao, take a look at Auntie Tong. When will she wake up? Jing Yunjiao nodded, but he caught a glimpse of the nurse who came in. Let's wait. After all, this was a hospital. Even if she could treat it, without Shen Hong's permission, it would not be easy to do it. Besides, if the hospital knew about it, they would not be satisfied. Xiao Haiqing understood and did not ask. However, Shen Hong clearly didn't know much about the hospital's rules. He asked suspiciously, little cousin knows how to treat patients. She has some skills. Let her take a look at your mother. Chapter 1040. When Xiao Haiqing heard that it could be treated, she immediately let out a sigh of relief. However, when she heard that he had to stop the medication, she became worried. This Shen Hong wouldn't dare to take the risk, right? Moreover, if the hospital knew that he had unilaterally stopped the medication, they wouldn't be happy. Are you confident? Xu Yuantarek asked seriously. Although he hadn't seen Jing Yunjiao treat patients, he had heard a little about it from the old man. Even Uncle Gan was full of praise for her. It was obvious that she had real skills. Jing Yunjiao nodded. As long as you do as I say, there won't be a problem. After Xu Yuantarek heard this, he looked at Shen Hong and saw that he was frowning in thought. He looked a little serious. After thinking for a long time, he asked, Little cousin, have you treated patients before? How many cases have there been, And what's the success rate? There are about a few hundred people who have been treated by me. There are also some who have been treated by other doctors. As for the success rate, it's currently about 90%. Jing Yunjiao replied. When she was in Huaning County, her grandfather had pushed many patients to her, and the patients would introduce more patients to her. However, the number wasn't a lot. However, she would also visit with Grandpa Gan. When her grandfather didn't have any patients, she would go to Grandpa Gan's clinic to help. After coming to the capital, she went to Immortal Crane Hall. Although she only went there a few times, the number of patients she saw every day was not small. She was a doctor, not a god. She couldn't treat all illnesses, so she only said that it was currently 90%. This percentage could go down or up in the future, but it wasn't the most important thing. However, the nurse who was quite tall when Jing Yunjiao said big words curled her lips and said, "The medication can't be stopped. Otherwise, it won't be good if there are problems with the body's organs. Little cousin, if I treat her, will it be dangerous?" Shunhong thought for a moment and asked again. It would be a lie to say that it's not dangerous. Everyone has an Achilles heel, and if there's a deviation in the acupuncture points during acupuncture, it will cause great harm to the body. However, if I don't treat her with acupuncture, the longer the delay, the lower the possibility of her waking up. Of course, it's not that she can't wake up, but it will depend on a miracle. However, how many miracles do you think there are in this world? Moreover, if she wakes up too late, her body's functions will definitely worsen, and it will affect her life in the future. Jing Yunjiao spoke the truth. In her current condition, if she didn't wake up, then she would wake up. Lying in bed for a long time, even her muscles would atrophy. Even if Shunhong took good care of her and gave her frequent massages to promote her blood circulation, it still couldn't be compared to her daily exercise. Hearing this, his face was. "Shunhong, don't worry. Yun Zhao's medical skills are really good. We have a close relationship with Aunt Tong, so we won't harm her." Xiao Haiqing said. "There's no need to be too anxious. Just give me a call when you think about it, but it's best not to be too late. Otherwise, the difficulty of the acupuncture will increase by a lot." It was normal for Shunhong to be worried, so Jing Yunjiao comforted him. "If there's a chance, I want to see you treat her with my own eyes before I can decide whether to ask for your help," Shunhong said apologetically. Jing Yunjiao thought for a moment and agreed. "No problem, I can do it tomorrow." After the new year, she still hadn't gone to the Red-Crowned Crane Hall. She reckoned that the group of old doctors would privately say that she was lazy. She wasn't really lazy. Ever since she treated so many patients for the first time, the group of old doctors became more and more interested in her. Every time she went, she would be so busy that she didn't even have time to drink water. Thus, she might as well split the time so that the group of old doctors wouldn't become more and more out of tune. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.